Hello and welcome to another episode of Geek-men and the Masters of the Thunder Nerds. I am Dustin,
Zombie.
and today we have with us Bill from Fresh Monkey Fiction. How's it going?
Hey, pretty good. Pretty good. How y'all doing?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Oh, I think that is all set. Let's do that. Okay. Yep. All right. We're ready to go. Rocking and rolling.
So, welcome to another exciting episode of It's Frickin Figures, another Monday night. Bill, why don't you get us started here? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with making toys.
So about 10 years ago or so, I decided I should maybe make some toys. I was really into, trying to make my own action figure for a long time, and big fan of, action figures since I was a kid. Grew up in the 80s, loved G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, all of that stuff. And, I really wanted to do my own action figure line. And, I met a lot of people in the industry. I don't come from that side of the business, but I certainly knew a lot of people. But I came from visual effects side of the business. So I understood how to work in 3D and do things in that type of space. And then Kickstarter became a thing. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, that could be interesting. I kind of see a way forward. And that's what we did. We launched almost 10 years ago, later this month. And now we're making all sorts of fun stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. I've got a few of your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I think my first exposure to you was the Naughty or Nice collection. That's the Santas. I actually have mine right here with you.
So. Arlen, who I partner with on that line, had done some sculpting for me in the past on some other stuff. And we had become pretty good friends, and he was like, hey, I've got this idea for a Santa Claus figure. Do you think people would want that? And I said, well, no one else is doing it. And I think let's give it a shot. And we sort of created this whole line out of that one idea. Yeah. And now we're on wave 3. I've got, you're not gonna be able to see much of this with my cameras up here, but I've got the goat prototype in front of me here. Yeah. So we're doing reindeers and goats, and we got a sleigh coming later this year. So yeah, it's definitely going strong.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that first wave, man. That I ended up getting, of course, the classic Santa, and then I had to get the pirate.
Oh yeah, the pirate.
Yeah, he did. So I picked a good one. So.
Yeah. We had all sorts of crazy ideas, and we didn't know really what was going to work or what wasn't going to work. So we decided to go with, well, let's do a pirate, let's do a zombie, let's kind of see what people are into, and that kind of sort of started to pave the way for what the line kind of ended up being. All the way to the reindeers, where we're doing a zombie reindeer or the demon goat or things like that. So it's become a pretty fun line, and we're going to, I hope, expand it even beyond the holidays. We tried a Halloween line last year, but it didn't really, unfortunately fund in the way that we sort of do we came very close. But we're going to revisit that again this year and kind of offer those and maybe do some other things. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that we would not get those figures into production in some way, because we had a bunch of folks who really wanted it to happen.
Yes.
But we work on a very much pre-order system. That's sort of the system that we work on. So if we don't get enough interest, we decide kind of not to move forward, and then we go and do hopefully other cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on top of that Halloween stuff you guys had planned. It was Let's let me see. The Bizarre World of Naughty or Nice, and you had Peter Pumpkin and Patch Pumpkin, along with some of the smaller offerings you called Hauntlings.
Yeah.
Bramble, Willow, and Phosphor. Now, Phosphor was the glow in the dark. Those are smaller, 5 points of articulation figures or whatever.
Yeah.
I was really digging them. I had them all for pre-order, and then when they didn't make it, I was really bummed.
Yeah, it's tough because again, we have sort of this model where it heavily relies on pre-orders, and I think there's a little bit of pre-order fatigue going on in the industry now, which I get. But what we're trying to do is, at least, like, unlike Kickstarters and other things, we don't really take funds up front. We've partnered with Big Bad Toy Store, who's been a great partner for us, and try to bring these lines into reality. And they come in and help give us some exposure, which has been fantastic. But yeah, sometimes things don't go, and that's okay. Like, that's all right. Like, that's, and hopefully the next thing will. And we've had a lot of success in a lot of other lines, like Monster Force and Crimson Moon and a bunch of other things. So yeah, we'll see again what happens this Halloween.
Yeah. So I guess maybe let's talk about what is it, Crimson Moon?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what was the inspiration there?
I think we were playing a homage to some other lines that were out there as well. And then we wanted to kind of build a little bit of a prequel storyline to Monster Force. So it was a combination of kind of both of those things. We did a version of Crimson Moon as part of our Eagle Force line. So I don't know how much you all are familiar with our Eagle Force line, but our Eagle Force line is sort of a continuation from the 80s Eagle Force line. We relaunched that I guess that's been about 7 years now, and we're over 100 figures into that line. It's 4-inch line, and we kind of did some Crimson Moon stuff there as well, and that became pretty popular. So we're like, okay, we've started to do more in the 6-inch 1/12 scale, and again, Santas were really popular, so we decided to do Monster Force and move into this with that line as well. So I think that a lot of it kind of came that direction, but I always make sure people know this: we're not abandoning our 4-inch scale. We're still doing some 4-inch figures. We announced a bunch at Joe Fest this year that we're going to put up for pre-order this fall. So I know a lot of folks, with a lot of the fandom, which is amazing, and I'm glad we get it and hear from folks. But we've been doing a lot more with 6-inch figures, and so a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, are you abandoning 4-inch?" No. And we literally dropped about 30 Eagle Force figures this summer that we've had through our pre-order mechanism, which takes anywhere from like 18 to 24 months. Yeah.
I was wondering what was reasoning for moving from your 4-inch with Eagle Force to 6-inch to Monster Force, but I guess you hinted about that through the success of the Naughty or Nice Santas.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we always wanted to do things at different scales. When we started, like that Kickstarter I mentioned, it was for a Kickstarter called Amazing Heroes, which was it is a group. It's a superheroes line that's sort of based on the form factor of Mattel Secret Wars from the 80s, and that's very simple. It was a very simple line, 5 points of articulation. That's what we started purposely. When I started doing toys, I wanted to start with something simple, and that was the idea. I didn't want to like jump in with like, oh my God, we're going to do like a 27-point articulated figure. I wanted to start with something simple. So we started there, and then gradually have moved on to different form factors because I'm a fan of all of that stuff. We did some minifigures for cops. We've done like this Long Box Heroes, which is a homage to the Super Powers form factor from the 80s. So and we're partnered with Jason Geyer Toyota on that line, and so we're playing in all sorts of form factors over here.
I like that you said you started with something a little more simpler, with a smaller scale, 5 points of articulation. Like, you didn't try to overshoot straight from the beginning, which I think a lot of people that do try to do that first thing, they find out, okay, there's more involved with this toy making thing than just an idea and shoot it off to the factory.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly learned a lot of our lessons, and it helped us along the way. We had some great help from, we went through a couple of factory issues and had some great help from some other toy folks who reached out and kind of saw us in trouble and helped bail us out, which I'll always be indebted to those folks for. The fans luckily stuck with us throughout the whole have stuck with us throughout the whole journey, which has been fantastic. I think that's been the best part of it is we built a little community of people who kind of understand the business model that we're in. We're not a Hasbro, we're not a Mattel, we're even not a Super 7, right? Or Mezco, right? Like we're pretty small. We do a variety of different lines, but we're still a small operation of me and some great partners who have helped like bring some of these lines to life.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always had the mantra of, I mean, if you're into making this stuff, you make cool stuff, people will buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as plain as it can be, There have been plenty of things that people have tried to make that they just kind of really missed the mark on, looks and sculpt and, trying to do too much all at one time. But I think you've set a kind of a model of doing it right. You started off, with the smaller scale, simpler articulation, just to kind of test the waters, and you've learned along the way, like you said. So it's definitely a winning combination there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that has definitely been the journey. And we'll continue to do that as we grow, right? As we're looking to do other things and go from there.
If your future stuff coming out is as good as these are solid figures. I mean, they move really well. Nothing really sticks. The articulation scheme makes sense for what it is. I mean, you make good stuff, man.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, I'm sitting on this is the Monster Force figures right now. Like this is, that's a production piece right here. So those are on the boat. And,
nice.
Will land. I hope this month. It might be early September. It just sometimes shipping, takes a while. But we're trying to make sure we're keeping that same quality that we did with the Santas, and then actually raising the bar. The hope is that stuff looks better than the renders that we're showing. Like we'll show. We work in a 3D space, so we'll show those renders, and then the goal is to improve that along the way once we get into production. And then also, because things take a while, we try to show things early and get feedback and make some shifts or some changes. There's a variety of things in Monster Force that we ended up doing through the journey of getting the figures produced, like butterfly joints and different types of things, adding different accessories. So more than likely, you may end up getting more things in the figure than even you thought you were getting by the time we're done. And so we try to throw a bunch of that stuff in. Not every figure, but we try to throw things in when we can, where it makes sense, whether that's an extra accessory or head or a stand or any of those things.
Now, the thing that I've noticed with most of the Monster Force stuff, especially the earlier series, is it looks a lot more military inspired. Like there's even if you don't use the monster pieces, like you've got a really great looking military figure set. But sure. I mean, I love the monster stuff anyway, so I'm always going to gravitate towards monsters. How has it been reception wise? Because you've got other lines out there that are military type figures. You've got Hasbro with G.I. Joe. You've got Valaverse putting out some other military type figures. How have people reacted to these in comparison to stuff like that?
So far, the reactions have been very good. Those other things are great too. I have a big fan of Hasbro and Valaverse stuff. I have as well, and everybody's making really great stuff right now, which I think is amazing. I think the big reaction is these look great, but hey, they're not out yet. So that's the reality. And so we did have a few figures that we offered at Joe Fest. We did a couple of clear versions of Dracula and Forgotten King. So there's been some reviews of those, and the reaction so far has been really good on those. So we're hoping that once these figures hit, we'll get the same reaction.
Instantly sold out too. Like those things were gone. Like I found out about them, and then I went to go look at, and I'm like, oh, they're gone. Crap.
Yeah, it's tough with the exclusive stuff. Like I am not a huge fan of exclusives. I'm mainly because usually those things are offered in a place where they're only accessible to the people that are going, and that's great and that's fantastic. But there's a bunch of folks who just, for a variety of reasons, can't get there. So
Yeah.
Those two figures we are going to reissue in the box, maybe with a little bit of different variety, but essentially you'll get a second chance at that stuff too. So I don't see a world where we offer something that is not available for someone. There might be a limited window. Hey, we're only going to offer this a week, and pay attention. If you order it that week, you'll get it. Might be something like that. But if you're paying attention, you're a fan of the line, you should be able to get the stuff. I hope, moving forward.
So I want to actually, Dustin, pull that back up and scroll down a little bit, because I want to, as cool as the military monster stuff is, like, scroll down a little bit, get to the guy in the black and white suit. Instant buy for me right there. Like, I've always wanted like good representation of like the Men in Black type of, not necessarily, the Will Smith and stuff like that, but actual like the suit type of glasses, shady kind of governmental types or whatever. I'm like, I'm down. Sold instantly. I've got them on pre-order. I can't wait for this figure to come out. I love it.
That's great. Well,
cool as the other stuff is, I'm like, that's mine.
Definitely trying to bring things into the line that are versatile as well. So, like you mentioned earlier, if some of that military stuff, if vampires aren't your thing, well, you can switch the head out to just a helmeted head that has no vampire or anything on it if you want to use it for. And I'm all for that. Like, I'm a big customizer for a long time. So I definitely, when we're thinking about these things, we're thinking beyond the line itself. We're thinking around like, how can we capture a bigger audience? How can we make these figures versatile? And again, not everyone is going to be that way, but a few of them definitely are that way.
Yeah.
That's why we designed the necks to come out too, like the neck sockets pop out so you can change not only the heads, but ethnicities and hands and other things. So try to make them as, and maybe we'll find out folks don't like them as customizable as we're making them, but hopefully folks will dig it when they get them.
Oh, I'm right there with you on the customizing thing. I've been doing it for like 32 years, anything and sculpting, all that kind of stuff. So I'm digging it, and I have a habit of when I see new stuff like this, I'm looking at it and like, okay, it's cool what it is, but what can I make it?
Yeah, so, absolutely. Like that's the fun part, right? Like that. It's like they're fun, right? They're fun for all sorts of reasons, right? So we're definitely playing into that. We're also doing things like partnering with other companies to bring things into the line. We did our Kilowog, which was a partnership we did with Maestro Union for their Veteran William figure. Yep. We reached out to them and said, "Oh my God, you guys have like a really awesome werewolf. I have them, and I would like to put them in our line. Would you be interested? And would you be interested in doing a colorway?" Right? And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely." So it's a little, I think, sometimes takes people like, "Oh my God, these two people are partnering together, or what are they doing?" But that's the fun part, and people are going to do it anyway. Like that's the thing, people are going to do it anyway. So why not bring it into the line, make it a real thing, and give something to somebody, hopefully too, like you have that figure, right? But maybe someone didn't, right? But they'll buy this line, they'll see how awesome it is, and they'll go buy some other stuff from Maestro Union, which they make really great stuff, right? So like that's the thing too, which I think is what I'm also really cool, is like, let's partner together and let's throw some sunshine that way to that company, because more than likely they're making great things as well. Like a lot of people, as we talked about earlier, like there's a lot of great product coming from a lot of really great companies, both big and small, right? And I'm all for trying to, sunshine that as much as I can, because and also it's a small community, so I know a lot of those people, and most of them are really great. And anytime we get we see each other at cons, we try to stop by each other's booths, see how you're doing. So why not bring that kind of really tight-knit community actually back out into the toys themselves and give folks an opportunity to maybe buy something they wouldn't normally buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got that figure on pre-order too. I was going to pick up another Veteran William to paint black, and then yours got announced. I'm like, nope, I don't have to now. I'm going to get that one.
Yeah. So that was really fun, and we're talking to a couple other companies about doing something similar if they're into it, and yeah. So it's all about making fun little plastic people. There's really what I like about it.
It's not just the Veteran William though. You also showed like a Sasquatch Bigfoot type of
Oh, we did. Yeah, we were working with Memory Toys on that, and they were actually being pretty good about it. And then we decided our first prototype was working with them on the Bigfoot. And then we did it, and we got it. We showed it at I think it was it PowerCon or Joe Fest a year ago. And then we decided it's kind of too big. We kind of thought it was too big, so we redesigned it and did our own, and that's the one we showed at Joe Fest this year. So they look similar. The heads were the same, but the body now is a little smaller. It's more of what we feel works better with the line. So we decided to do that, and that had nothing to do. Memory Toys was great. We just decided at the end of the day, it was like, we might be able to do our own, and it might fit better with what we're doing.
They are pretty sizable figures. I'll agree with you there. But no, yeah, even that one looks great. I've got to get my hands on that one too. I I love the more monster stuff over like the whole military aspect.
Yeah, we're gonna do more monster stuff moving forward. We've got, again, like Bigfoot, we got a Yeti. We're planning on some other bigger monsters. I think the challenge with this might get too into the weeds, but we got a little bit of time. I think the challenge a little bit too, with the size of the company that we are, we have to look at what does parts reuse look like. And that's just a reality. I mean, for smaller companies, if you look at folks like Four Horsemen, especially their early days when they were working on stuff when they first started, things like Animal Wars, The Kingdom. There's a lot of stuff out there that, at this level, we have to really look at that. So that's a real thing because these things are expensive to make.
Yeah.
And so as we look at any of the things we do, we sort of look and go, okay, how can we reuse this and it not feel like we're just trying to like sell something already has? Like, how can we like make unique characters using, and it's creatively, it's fun actually to work in a box, but sometimes it does inhibit us from doing some things that we want at this point in time. Hopefully that'll change over time as the line grows, but right now we're trying to stay a little conservative around it.
Yeah,
I think credit goes to your sculptors and your painters in that aspect.
Absolutely.
Too, because I mean, if you've got a really great sculpt and you have a really great painter, they can do amazing things just between the two of them and create different characters with just something as new as, you got a new head you got to put on it or something like that.
Yeah. So the folks who are helping design some of this stuff are doing a really great job trying to figure that out too. And again, we want things to feel fresh, but it is also very much a reality of how we actually have to produce these things.
Well, it's smart business too. I mean, if you have a brand new sculpt for every single character, you're not going to make it very long.
Yeah. And again, hopefully the line grows big enough that we can do more of those things, and that's we'll have to kind of see.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like the Horsemen are just now starting to get to the point where they can do more things like outside the box, like stretch a little bit, their wings a little bit.
It's been, I think, 10 years since Mythic Legions came out, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's taken them 10 years to get to the point where, okay, we can really start cranking out the new sculpts on some of these things now. We're at a point where we can afford to do that now.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Like most of their stuff now that's coming out has a lot less parts reuse or sharing, I guess I should say, than they did initially. And that has to do with the fans supporting it, right? That's awesome. They have a great community. Those guys are really great, and the fans really support it. And I think that's where, we're trying to also do something similar. I think all of us who are making toys at that level really look at the Horsemen as going like, all right, they really, made a go of it. And we all collect a lot of that stuff too. So we're all happy to have, those things in our collection too.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a question here, because you had mentioned about people customizing your figures and everything with the large number of Monster Force figure characters that are coming out that you have planned. Are those modular made like the Horsemen have done their stuff, or is it more, it's pegged in and permanent?
Most of it's pegged in. I mean, you can heat up some things and pop some parts out. There are certain parts like neck, heads, hands that are made to be swapped out. But there are certain things with a little bit of heat, like torsos can pop out or the upper legs can pop off. those type of things with a little bit of heat to them, like any customizer would normally do. They're not completely made to shift every part around, those type of things. But the goal is, as we get into more lines, like for example, we introduced a line at Joe Fest. It's not out yet, but we previewed it, called Soldiers of Fortune. That line is really geared towards customizability, army building. There's not a lot of fiction associated in that line, which is kind of rare for us not to build something in there like that. But that line is made for the folks that, hey, I want to buy a head pack and a weapons pack and a gear pack, and maybe swap some things around and make some extra background characters or their own character, which I think is more fun.
So is that another 6-inch figure line?
Yeah. So you'll see a lot of reuse from that line, from our current lines in that line as well, with just different colors. For folks who do like the military stuff, there's like a military figure, and that figure is gonna be the same, but he's gonna come in different colorways, like orange and black or white or camo, and that type of thing. For folks who really want to do kind of more of the army and the customizing, that maybe we won't really lean as much into with Monster Force. I mean, it's there. You've got different parts and heads and those kind of things, but Soldiers of Fortune is really more made for that.
Good. There's been other military figures in the past. Like I had, I don't know if you remember a company called Resource, and then I think they switched over to Plan B. Like I've got a bunch of those, so I'm not I'm not anti-military figure in any kind of way. It's just I'm more into the monsters.
Yeah.
But yeah, those figures. I mean, they for what they were at the time, they had great accessories.
Yeah, they were great at the time. Did they do a World War II version of them too? I think at the time.
I think so.
Yeah. But those were great. Yeah, and I think one of the things that you're seeing now with some of the lines, especially with G.I. Joe Classified doing so well right now, is you're seeing kind of this resurgence on that stuff, which is great, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you're also seeing, I think, a trend to do some more of the retro type stuff that's going on with He-Man. They've kind of went back to their older body style with some updated articulation. You've got Super 7 doing things still in their reaction scale. So again, there's a lot of different form factors out there, which I'm really excited about, because I think I collect. I mean, in my desk in front of me, I got all sorts of different sizes of figures in front of me right now.
I was just about to ask, what other lines are you into? Like, what do you collect?
Pretty much G.I. Joe right now is dangerous for me. My wife is kind of like, really? And I'm like, yeah, there's more of these coming. So don't. I'm just a huge G.I. Joe fan, and you can see that through in some of the lines that I do for like Eagle Force or even Monster Force. There's the raw elements all come from that, including the fan fiction and things, or not the fan fiction, but the fiction that is a part of the line as well. In the same way that me as a fan was a fan of that stuff from Larry Hama with G.I. Joe when I was a kid, with the comic book and the file cards. So a lot of those things kind of came through into the other lines that I'm doing because of that stuff. So G.I. Joe is a big one. The other one right now is McFarlane's Batman animated line.
Okay.
They are reissuing and doing some additional characters that DC Direct did. And I did not pick those up when they originally came out. And so now I'm getting some of those. Plus, they're doing some big vehicles, which at a decent price point, which I wrestle with, because I don't know if you guys collect any of the vehicle stuff right now, but at 1/12, but they're not small.
No,
and, I don't have a lot of room.
You're talking to the guy who has the Thunder Tank.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And the Turtle Van.
Yeah, right.
Cat Slayer coming.
Right, and Cat Slayer coming.
I took my wife by Comic-Con last year, and I showed her that, and I was just like, I want to get this, and she was like, okay, but then I decided it was too large. It was just like we were standing there going, I don't know where we would put this thing as much as I want it, right? And that prevents me from buying a lot of the stuff. But McFarlane's putting out stuff that's like pretty good price right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pass up when those things are $50 or $60 versus the $200 to $100+ bucks. So it's like, so that's my So McFarlane's another one with the Batman stuff it's hard to pass up because of the price point.
So okay, this is off topic here, but how annoying is it to you that the Batmobile lights up green? The Batman Forever lights up green. It's like, it's blue, right? Like, I'm not misremembering.
I don't know. I do remember a lot of green with that movie. I don't know if the Batmobile lit up green, but yeah. I mean, I guess it lights up, so I guess that's something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something. It's like, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is change it to blue.
Right, change the colors. Right.
Pop this up.
Yeah, the '89 Batmobile was awesome that they did.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Joker mobile that they did for the animated line was another thing that I was like, how am I even getting this right now? Like that's I mean, you look at these things, you're just like, I don't understand how I own this. I mean, like especially for that price point in a world today where you don't see a lot of those things on the shelves at mass retail.
Right.
I'm like, can't pass that up for $60, even though I don't have a place to put it at the moment.
I think the Batman bike thing, the Bat bike, was one of the first ones that we got that we were like, I need this for all my skeleton rider people. It's just like, I need this now.
Yeah,
ended up getting several.
Exactly, like it's those things, especially because they're mass, are really good deals.
Mm-hmm.
And they're nice. They're quality. They're nice too. Like you said, they light up. They have some nice features, and it's great too to see that there's a bunch of folks doing vehicles at that scale. Raman's doing some stuff. Oliver's is doing some, obviously Hasbro's, but it's not just Hasbro, right? Other folks are coming in and doing some things at that scale, which I think is really fun.
Yeah. So how about you? Have you dipped your toe into thinking about vehicles?
Well, I mean, like I said, for Santa, we're going to do a sleigh. So Arlen's working on a sleigh right now. So that'll be our first vehicle-like thing for that scale. We are looking at some smaller type vehicles, motorcycles, those type of things for Monster Force, those type of things, characters that would go along with said motorcycle. But we're not
a tank.
I don't know. I don't know if I do anything that big yet. I feel like there's a lot of stuff happening already in a lot of places that are pretty cool. I would love to partner with someone who was doing a vehicle if they wanted to do a Monster Force like vehicle, and we could do some cool different parts and help contribute to that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah.
The first thing I'm thinking of is Ramen Toy.
Yes.
They just showed off a bunch of vehicles, and I'm thinking those like those need to be in Monster Force.
Yeah, our booth was next to them at Joe Fest, and that was really fun. Like looking at all that stuff that they brought a lot. Yeah, for that booth that they had a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Dustin knows a guy. he can introduce you.
This is awesome. We're hopefully gonna have him on here in a few weeks. So
nice. Yeah. So he's doing some great stuff there. As well. Even Mezco's getting into some vehicle stuff for their Rumble Society. They're doing a vehicle, and I think it's great that folks are supporting things at that scale, because they're not. I mean, yes, the mass retail stuff's a little cheaper, but most of the stuff is not. That's happening.
Yeah,
and they're big, right? Where are you gonna put these things? So I think it's great that they exist, and the Thunder Tank too. I mean, I think it's so big. Yeah, it's great. It's massively huge. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. I always try to champion the independent producers and stuff like yourself. Like everybody always focuses on the big guys and always talks about the stuff coming out from them. But on our show, I always try to spotlight the independent toy makers, because y'all are really making some really great stuff, and I don't think a lot of people even know about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, when I was at Joe Fest, it was really great because Comic-Con was about a month after, and Joe Fest was great because the barrier for entry to get into Joe Fest for folks to get a booth is not as Comic-Con is very expensive and very hard to get a booth. It was like a waiting list, the whole thing. So Joe Fest was great because there was a bunch of indie creators there, all sorts of different scales, and I had 2 hours free, and the whole time I was there, and that's what I did. I went to all of the folks who were making stuff and talked to them, and was like, hey, I wanted to meet them and see what they were doing, because that's the stuff that excites me as a collector too. And again, I love, as I said, G.I. Joe and other things too. So those definitely take a part of my collection. But the indie guys, I mean, like, me, all of us, it's great, right? It's great that we're in a world where you can see those things come to life, because 20 years ago, that was not a thing.
Right.
It was not a thing. And then the other part of it too is most of the bigger companies are really focusing on licensing, which is either licensing that they own, like Hasbro G.I. Joe, or licensing that they get, like Hasbro with Star Wars. And that's really where their focus is. You're not seeing too many new or independent things happening from the big companies today, at least in this space. So it's great that the indie guys can come in and actually kind of, hey, there's something new we can introduce to the market that you're not going to see from a Hasbro or a Mattel, because of the structure of where they're at. And if there's no TV show attached to it or movie, it's hard for them to kind of position themselves around that. And that's also why you've got great stuff happening, I think, from Super 7 with The Worst. You've got Rumble Society from Mezco, and then of course you've got a bunch of the indie folks making really great things. And so I think it's a really great time to be a collector, because the landscape that you can collect is amazing now. And sadly, you do have to pick and choose a little bit, I think, unless you have a lot of money. So that's the downside to, I guess, to all of this. But the upside is you really have, you really have your choice of what you want to go after as a collector on all sorts of different form factors and different types of genres. And I think it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I think the bulk of my collection these days is from independent companies. I've kind of shunned the bigger guys because of either the direction that they've gone or their price points and what their offerings, what they give you. Sometimes I don't feel like the value is there even for those guys. Even if you can go just into any store and pick it up off the shelf, I'm like, that's not what I'm into anymore. I'm much more into, like what you're doing right now.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, everybody, I even myself as a collector, I've gone through those, ups and downs. If I was into this or into that, or into even, Star Wars. And then I was into, I've kind of always been into Captain America. Captain America has always been my thing. So I have a very big Captain America collection. But it ebbs and flows, right? I think for all of us, as we collect, a lot of us have been collecting for a really long time. And that's why I think it's great that there's just a lot of variety out there. And I'm always excited. Every time I see a new, action figure Kickstarter, I always back it. If, maybe not the whole thing, but I'll back at least a couple of figures and follow their journey and wish them a lot of success, because it's hard to do this kind of thing. But I think it's great that now there's an opportunity for that.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Absolutely. And Kickstarter really gives that opportunity to people that are just trying to start in that business.
And it takes time. And that's where I think the fan community has been really amazing, because it's not hey, I want to do a thing and 6 months later it exists. It's, hey, I'm doing a thing. We need some support to do it. We're going to bring you along for the ride if you want to be along for the ride. And in a couple of years, which is a long time, you'll end up with something on your shelf. And a lot of people may lose interest along that way, and then they may come back. I mean, a lot of people with Monster Force, like, oh, it was really cool and I loved it. And I kind of fell away from it because I really want these things we live in a society now, especially with social media, where, it's very much, I have a thing and then I've moved on, right? We're kind of in that world, and the toy thing is not in that space. So I certainly understand that. And my hope is the folks that maybe canceled their orders or didn't like it, maybe come back around once the toys are out, and hopefully it's for them and they'll find it again. And that's all of that's okay, right? I don't have any ill will towards anyone. Everybody has their own situations that they're in. I'm a collector too, so I totally get it.
We're definitely living in an instant gratification time, especially with the internet. You see something, you want it, you buy it, and within a week or less, it's at your doorstep. So it is what it is. But with anything, patience is key. So you have to be patient.
And I hope that because of this journey that we're on with these things, that I try to be accessible to folks on my social media when they ask questions, or, hey, I haven't done a lot of interviews in the past, because up until recently, my full-time job I was too busy to be able to do that kind of stuff. So things have changed. So, yeah, I think most people understand, right? So things have changed for me recently. So I now can, when people ask, I can say, yeah, I can hop on right in the evening. And my kids are older now; they're not kids anymore. So those things have shifted for me over the last couple of years, which allows me to do more of these things. So I try to do more of this type of stuff. Meet people who are also doing cool things like podcasts and and stuff on YouTube, and then hopefully folks come to our social and will say things like, oh, hey, this is awesome, or have you thought about doing this, or where's this at? So I try to foster sort of that community with everybody. And hey, and then show pics of the stuff that you've made, either customs or we had someone, as I said, we launched about 30 Eagle Force figures this summer. They finally dropped. A lot of those figures, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Eagle Force, but back in the day in the 80s, it was a die-cast metal line. They were all gold uniformed figures. So we did for the 40th anniversary, we kind of redid a lot of those figures in gold. And but we didn't make all of them from the original line. And so one of the folks online bought them, and he customized some of the ones that we didn't make, and he put them up there. And they were beautiful, like they're amazing, right? So I'm like, man, please show more of that stuff. Like that's really exciting. And people like bring their own creativity to it. I get super excited about it because I think it's great.
Yeah, for sure. Like even with customizing for me, I got him, and as cool as he is, I want to make like an actual pirate out of him, not Santa. Just because it's close, it's almost there. Like I need to pick up the lumberjack one, I think.
Oh yeah,
and then make a couple of other little mods to him, and then I can like paint them and
post it,
like that classic pirate.
Do it and post it on the some of our social stuff. We have a little group called Fresh Monkey Fans that we've got on Facebook that people are posting things all the time, so that's great. And again, like I am so thankful for the fans and the community who have been supporting this stuff. We've got folks that are we're supporting our products when we're doing Amazing Heroes, our first Kickstarter, and are still around supporting stuff today. So it's great to see everyone, and the fact that they're still there, I think speaks to, hopefully we're doing a good job, but also I think it speaks to what folks are really looking for in some of their toys today in their action figure collection.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, is there anything that you tried to make in the past and it just didn't work out? Like what's like one failure that just didn't work that you really still want to try to revisit?
Well, we had a couple of Kickstarters that didn't work. One of the Kickstarters we had was, and you can still find it on Kickstarter, it was an Amazing Heroes line where it was going to be 4-inch articulated figures, and we had a lot of licenses that we got for that line, Savage Dragon, Madman, a lot of stuff, and that Kickstarter didn't fund. And that was, we had a bunch of cool stuff that we prototyped and put a lot of sweat into that thing, and I was really sad that it didn't make it. A lot of it is because I'm a huge comic book nerd, and I wanted figures from some of those things, and I still don't have them yet today. So there's things that I'm like, I don't know if you're familiar with Flaming Carrot, but then we had a Flaming Carrot figure, and I really wanted to make that figure. I still do. So we're talking about trying to get it into our Long Box Heroes line and at least do something with it. I'm going to talk to Bob again to see if he's interested. But that was the one thing that, man, I wish that had funded because there were some cool things we were doing with that.
So how about an Easter line where you can mix in a Flaming Carrot?
Yeah, I think we are talking with Naughty or Nice about, like I said, we tried that Halloween thing, and we're going to do some other stuff. And so I've been talking with Arlen, Arlen's really the brainchild of the line. Like it's his thing. I feel fortunate enough that I can partner with him to make it, and I get to throw some ideas out that he actually likes. Ideas out that he does not like, and we have a good riff back and forth on certain things, which has been great. But it's been a great partnership, and he's amazing. And so I've been kind of going like, hey, should we start to expand into some other holidays? And I think once we get through this Christmas, where we'll have like the sleigh and Mrs. Claus, hopefully we'll look at potentially some other holidays beyond that and see.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of like holiday themed figures out.
No,
I mean
Halloween. Yeah, Halloween there is. Like Halloween, you see a lot of because of monsters and those kind of things. But other holidays you don't. And the great thing about it, and again, I can only speak to me as a collector. I live in LA. My house is very small, so I can't have everything displayed all the time. I wish I lived in a state that had a basement. That's like my dream of like having a basement. Because I go to friends' houses who are in Denver or other places, and I will go down there and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, how is this a thing? But it's we what I do is I bring my holiday toys out for the holiday, and then I bring them back, put them away. So it's kind of like this excuse to sort of buy more holiday figures because I know that I'm going to bring them out for like I'm a big monster guy, obviously. So I bring a lot of the monster toys out for Halloween, and then they go back to their box in their home, and then they come out for a couple months in the fall. So I think that's another thing that I think has helped with the Naughty or Nice line in the same way that people buy various things for Christmas, the either holiday ornaments or the miniature sets or those things. People bring them out for the holiday and then they put them back. And that's something that I think we've seen with the Naughty or Nice line. Some people will display it all year, but a lot of folks are like, okay, I can bring those out for this year and then they can go away and then come back out again.
Yeah, like I make the comparison for your Santa, like just the classic Santa, and you did like the there's a white Santa, and then there's of course a black Santa for whichever you prefer or whatever. Like this is your classic Santa. Like at the time, I think the Horsemen had put out one that was more like a traditional, like old tale type of Santa Claus, Father Christmas type of character, and people either loved it or hated it. And then they were going, man, why can't you just make like this one? And then I got it in hand, and I'm like, somebody did make it. Go buy this.
Right.
Yeah. That's what it helps to do. And again, thank you all for even like anytime anybody shares anything or exposes some of folks to new things like this. It's really great. Big Bad Toy Store has been a good partner for us in terms of that. We saw as we started putting things on there and started working with them, we definitely saw more attention to our lines when we got on Big Bad Toy Store. And but that's it. Like as much as people are involved in toys, sometimes you get lost in your own little, and that's a great thing about fandom today too, is that you find your tribe, right? And you're like, okay, I love this thing, and now I'm going to be on this board all the time talking about that thing. And sometimes you forget that there's other things happening. So it's great when folks, like I even talked about earlier, when we can either partner or we can expose folks to a different line that maybe they're not familiar with. Like that brings me so much joy because I think there's people that are making really great stuff even beyond us. And I love to sunshine that because maybe that brings someone into that line and then they get into it. It's the same thing with like all of us when we watch TV shows and stuff. Like we talk about those, like, hey, did you see it? Oh, I didn't see it. Oh, I trust you. I have the same taste. So maybe I'll go watch that show. And maybe it wasn't on my radar before. So the toy thing is the same thing for me, where it's like, hey, let's sunshine some of this stuff from other indie toy makers because people sometimes don't even know it exists. I get that all the time. I go to a convention like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. And I'm like, do you collect toys? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, I've apparently done a very poor job marketing my toys, so I can do a better job at that. But it's great that everybody is able to kind of like, you all like talk about these things and help kind of raise awareness to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying. People don't always listen to me, but I try.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man.
Well,
so, okay. So I guess one other question I have, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you are like, I always wanted to talk about this. I want to get this out. Is there anything like that you want to just put out in the universe?
Well, thanks for asking. It's a great question. I think most of it is that I try to reiterate again this model that we have around pre-orders because it's different from what a lot of people are currently accustomed to, unless they're buying a lot of Kickstarters or those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that everyone has to love it. That's not what I'm asking, but I do try to let people know, like, this is sort of in the world today, the model that we have to work in. And so I like to talk about that to make sure that people kind of understand that, hey, we're putting things out there early. We want to get some feedback. We're looking for pre-orders. It's not the model that some of the other companies are doing. And that's not me saying that those are bad models or one model is better than the other, but it's just the reality of what we are doing to produce what we're making today at this time. And maybe that will shift in time, where we'll do, we'll just do the toy and then you order it and in 6 months you get it. But right now it's definitely about that sort of that 2-year cycle. So those are the things that I want to make sure I touch on for folks who aren't familiar with the things that we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's how it is for anyone who isn't major. Like I'm big into, Super 7, their pre-orders, because I'm a big fan of Thundercats.
Yeah.
And that's the only place I can get Thundercats.
Right.
So it's like, oh man, I have to wait.
I'm used to waiting, a year plus for Four Horsemen stuff, because I've been with them since the beginning of their independent days through their fantastic exclusive Minotaurs.
Oh,
so
great, man.
I know the wait. Like, I'm used to it. That's expected.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the hardest thing was waiting the 2 some odd years that it took. It was a little bit over 2 years to get the Aether wave. That was the first wave that I went all in on.
Yeah.
And it was like, they were like, oh, you still don't have that yet? And and then figures are showing up on my doorstep and they're like, oh, I didn't order this. Did you order this? And I'm like, yeah, like 2 years ago. Okay. Like, relax. It didn't come out now.
That wait was nothing compared to the Anatherian 9 wave that the Horsemen did with the elephant and the rhino, and that was a nightmare for them and for fans that had pre-ordered it.
I remember.
I could do a whole show just talking about that.
And that so I do bring that up because it is a real thing, and I don't want to shy away from it. And I want folks to kind of understand it, and hopefully, like I said, like these are journeys that we're all on. The hope, and this is, I've seen this happen sadly too, is that sometimes the 2-year wait happens and you get the thing and it's like, oh, this is not stellar. So the hope that we're trying to do is make sure, like, if we're going to have this kind of cycle, that we're making figures that come out and they're better than the thing that we were soliciting. Like, that's always the hope in some way.
Yeah.
Also, again, like, it's funny. I was talking to, I don't know. So we debuted our Cops and Crooks line at Joe Fest. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cops and Crooks line from the 80s.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna make that at 6-inch. And so I reached out to a gentleman named Bart Sears, who was one of the original concept designers for that line, who also was a comic book illustrator and has made a name for himself in comics. But anyway, I was talking to him about toys, and he's not really, even though he was designing toys back in the 80s, he doesn't really collect much anymore. So we were discussing the Cops line, and I was talking to him about, like, hey, this is a $40 action figure. And even though we were on the phone, I could hear his jaw drop. Because he's got older kids now, and he's not really buying toys that much. And a lot of folks who are not in the space that we're in still think toys are $10, maybe less than that, right? And they're not. and so So it's when we're making these things, I'm conscious of that with everybody too. Like, this is not nothing for everyone. Like, this is a big thing, right? So when folks are supporting the line, it's not just there's a lot of folks who are rah, which is great too. And even if you can't afford to buy everything, and not that I'm asking you to buy everything, but even if you're buying a couple things, I'm always so happy with the facts that people are buying and supporting these things, because they're not $10 toys. They're not the $4 toys we grew up with, or the $10 toys we grew up with.
Right.
So it's a big thing, and I want to make sure that folks are getting something for that at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just with the stuff, from the renders that you're showing, with the stuff that you're putting out now, I mean, the quality is there, because you just in the amount of stuff that every figure comes with. It's I'm going to go back to the Santa again. I mean, that first figure, it came with, there's a gift box. It had an alternate head. His hat is removable. So, I mean, and then you also included, I think, I don't think I got an accessory set, but this came with the figure. His toy sack. He's got extra hands. There's a plate of cookie.
There's hand in there. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff there to add to the value to justify the price point.
We're trying to pack in. No, we had the Not Your Nice list. Make sure your name's on that. And I think we try to pack that stuff in. Eagle Force, we've done Eagle Force. There's a lot of stuff. I think there's like 35 hands that come with every Eagle Force. I mean, it's getting a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. But you can afford to do that because it's a smaller scale. So
and
we have presenting that value.
Right. So we're trying to, again, bring as much value and customization into any of these things, multiple heads, that type of stuff. But because I said, these are not $10 things that we're buying anymore. I mean, even the, and I understand it, like even the 5-point articulation stuff is $20. And I understand why it's $20. Like I make the stuff. So I understand why between that and licensing, even at mass retail, why something has to be at that price point.
Yeah.
So it's important that we are listening to the fan community and getting feedback and pivoting if we need to. And luckily, that's the upside to that 18 to 24 month cycle, is that we have the opportunity sometimes in there to make those shifts.
Yeah.
Whereas the other companies are like, here's the thing, pre-order it. It's because it's what it is, and you're going to get it in 6 months. But if you don't like it, unfortunately, this is already baked in the oven, and you're getting the cake, right? So, So I think that's the part that I like to highlight to everybody when we talk, because it's the piece that like people forget sometimes that's not a part of it, but it is, and very much so. And it's not something that the other companies, given their models, can do. And that's not me knocking them. That's their model, and that's fine, right? So it's not me saying one's better than the other. It's just saying like that's the flexibility we have when we're doing stuff, and it takes a little longer.
Yeah. And sometimes that's a better option, to take your time, do it right, make sure everything fits the way it's supposed to, moves the way it's supposed to, instead of just, hey, here's our idea. We're going to make this. And like you said, 6 months time, you get it, but then it's riddled with QC issues. And then you expect from people are going to feel jaded because of that. Of course.
We had an issue, like Monster Force was supposed to ship 2 weeks ago, but I found an issue with one of the blast effects not really fitting well in one of the guns. So I was like, how do we fix this? And the factory were like, hey, give us a week and we can adjust it. So, and so we're really trying to make sure that stuff is as good as it's going to be before it lands. Yeah. And there are still issues. Like there are still, I mean, I know other companies who do the same thing. And then sometimes those things just pop up and they happen. And it's unfortunate, even though we're trying our best to QC everything and look at every little, making sure every part is there and it comes with thing and the joints are going to work in the right way. And those things still happen, unfortunately. But the goal is to keep improving. Yeah. Hopefully we have good customer service, and hopefully we're transparent about it, and the fans will stick with us through those things if they happen, because they have happened to us a little bit in the past too. So far, I think if you're talking about it with the fans and you're transparent and you're not steering away from it, you're constantly communicating. I have found that this community is really supportive of that stuff, which is great, right? It's great. It's small, but it's great that folks are willing to, hey, I understand that happens. I'm not gonna, go and scream and moan. I'm gonna understand that's a thing, and either they'll continue to support it or they won't, and that's all right. But at least that most of them kind of get it, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're always going to have those that they just don't get it no matter what or how it's explained. And, there's always going to be those people out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the internet, and that's the way it works. But I have found that the majority of folks are not like that, which I think is great. And I encourage folks to, again, hop online, hop on our socials and make comments, and come to our Facebook group and show some photos and talk about the things that you like. And I try to pop into, there's a guy that runs a Monster Force group, so I try to pop in there every now and again. And there's a guy that runs an Eagle Force group, so I try to pop in there every now and again too, and say, hey, this is this thing, or people ask questions, and I'll try to chime in there too. So it's just exciting that folks want to do that and talk about the product, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely. There's a lot of product that is still available for purchase in stock at Big Bad Toy Store. So if you've seen any of the stuff that we've talked about. Dustin, he went to your website there and showed a few things. But if you go to Big Bad Toy Store and in the search bar type in Fresh Monkey Fiction, like it'll bring up everything that they've ever offered, and you just scroll through, see in stock, and then there's still a lot of it is available for pre-order. So they still have quantities available. If you like something, you see something, and you're willing to wait for it, you can pre-order it.
Yeah, and you don't. Big Bad doesn't.
I tell you what, I can't wait to get. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I can't wait to get some of the first series of the Eagle Force in hand, and when we do, I hope we can get you back so we can. Maybe have just. I mean, not Eagle Force, the Monster Force.
Monster Force.
Yeah. Both really. I mean, but yeah, I'd love to dive a little more deeply into the Monster Force specifically because, go Monsters.
Oh, they're so cool.
They're on the boat now. So when they hit, absolutely. If you all want to jump back on and talk about them, I'm always happy to hop back on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we've had you for an hour here, so I don't want to keep you too long. Again, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and talking to us.
No, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, and thanks for the awesome questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. So like you said, Zombie said, freshmonkeyfiction.com, or go to Big Bad Toy Store, search up Fresh Monkey Fiction, and go to town.
Facebook group, Fresh Monkey Fans.
Yep.
So go join that.
Yep. Go do that. Go do the thing. So just a quick announcement. We will be... Wait, no, that's not the right show. So that's fine. So we will have a show on Friday, ADHD Theater. So come tune into that, and if you so wish. And until next time, we have been the Geek-men.